So good and decent people of YouTube, I'm supposed to be taking a break. I'm supposed to be working on some long-form information to get to you by the weekend, but instead, I have no choice but to come on here and let you know that 34-time convicted felon, otherwise known as ex-President Bone Spurs, who dodged the draft by getting a doctor to say he had bone spurs and then later on forgot which one of his feet those bone spurs were in, has now floated basically a mandatory draft. And I say basically because when it was reported by the Washington Post, who had an interview with Christopher Miller, who was in charge of the Pentagon in the last days of the Trump presidency, he said the best thing to do would be to start a mandatory military aptitude test for all students getting ready to graduate, 17, 18, 19 years old. Not only did he say that, but he also said that if the students decide not to take it, they may not graduate, and schools that do not require this mandatory military aptitude test would be void of funding, all funding from the federal government, forced to implement this law. Now, here's the thing. Project 2025, you can call this an amendment, an addendum, if you will. Every week I've been putting up a little bit about the pillars, but it's 900 and something pages, so there are things that I can't talk about or don't get to say. One of them is, inside of Project 2025, there is this idea, mandatory drafting, and how it's great for the country, and it will show kids how much America they are missing out on, how great it really is, and how kids are just not patriotic enough. So we got to institute this draft. So when Donald Trump says, well, I didn't come up with this idea, or even lies further than that, which he hasn't yet, and actually says, I have no plan on doing that, remind yourself that he's already pledged to follow Project 2025, in which that draft I just spoke about is in already. Understand, he's already pledged to follow the tenets, the mandates of Project 2025. In Project 2025, the draft is to be reinstated through multiple different means. One of them is just this: mandatory military aptitude testing for all students. If they refuse, they may not graduate, and the school who refuses to do this will not get federal funding. The last piece of this news that's most important is Republicans have decided now that they don't want to fund our military in other countries by refusing to pay for the money that goes to NATO to fund our military in other countries. That doesn't go to fund other militaries. The money we put in goes to support our military that's stationed in other countries, to make sure that they're ready. The consequence of doing that, if they get their way, is our military will inevitably be sent back or reduced. We have a larger military here. And then added on top of that, mandatory military aptitude tests, of which the government can draw a pool from when they draft. And then on top of that, Donald Trump saying he will use the Insurrection Act to stop everybody from protesting when he becomes president. I'm here to tell you that that military part of a military dictatorship is the exact thing that you just heard me describe. In America, there are 300 million people. So unlike Germany in the 40s, where you could have done it with just an SS, a dictator would need quite a lot more military than we have in order to actually stamp down your rights to protest in this entire 300 million person country. So as they do everything they can to ensure that our military is brought back to America to stand on our own borders, whilst bolstering the numbers by drafting every young person they can to stand in the states against their own people. Remember that this November.